Yes, I have a very simple question. I would like the panelists to tell us what they would do if they would be the Prime Minister of Israel.
Rodger, what would you do if you're the Prime Minister of Israel?
Yeah, well, listen, I think he's indicated what he is going to do. He's failed on his watch to provide security to Israel, so he has to act to make sure that that deterrence capability that has protected Israel over the years is reinstated, and that means, unfortunately, a ground incursion into Gaza and the degradation of Hamas's capabilities to a degree that means that it won't be able to threaten the state of Israel for the foreseeable future. People talk about destroying it. It's not practical to destroy it, but it's practical to degrade it. I think that's really the only option that he has, and for the rest of the world, they need to hold Israel to account to make sure that it prosecutes that operation within international humanitarian law, but also understanding that Hamas is guilty of a horrendous terrorist act, and they still hold a large number of foreign nationals as hostages and also Israeli citizens as hostages, and they've postured themselves within Gaza against international humanitarian law within and amongst the civilian population. So it's a very difficult problem, but I don't think there is any alternative other than a ground incursion. OK. I'm going to go next to Matt. Is that your view too? Because there are some people saying there should be a ceasefire. In your view, does there have to be a ground incursion? Is that what you would do if you were Israeli Prime Minister? Well,
if I was the Israeli Prime Minister, I would act to defend the citizens of my nation, and that would include attempting to have the hostages released. Hamas, a terrorist organisation, unprovoked, attacked and killed and slaughtered Israeli citizens. People that were at a dance party enjoying themselves were brutally gunned down. So Israel has the right to defend itself, and the motion that was passed in the Parliament last week that was moved by the Prime Minister and seconded by the opposition leader, I spoke in support of that motion. So I think Israel has the right to defend itself, but as Rodger said, it has to act within the bounds of international law and uphold the sanctity of civilian lives.
So this is the question. If you were the Prime Minister of Israel, and clearly none of you were going to be, but if you were...
There's still time. Still time.
Very ambitious of you. But would you do it the same way? Because some of your colleagues, in fact, I interviewed on RM Breakfast last week, Ed Husick, a cabinet minister who says this looks like collective punishment.
Well, Israel has acted to warn people in Gaza that there is a ground incursion coming.
Well, where would they go?
And advise them to move south to safety. So Israel has warned people. I think the point that Ed and Anne have been making is the importance of the sanctity of civilian lives on both sides of this conflict, for Palestinians and for Israelis. And that goes to the importance of upholding international laws that do exist for conflicts such as this.
Larissa?
I think that there have been millions of people protesting over the last weekend across the world and calling for a peaceful resolution to the situation. Incredibly worried about the images that we are seeing come out of Israel and Gaza. There is no military solution here. And I think it is incumbent on us to call on our leaders. We are military allies with the US to call for a ceasefire. Because what is happening here, where does this end? And I think for many people, for many ordinary Australians, there is a lot that we can do. It's not something that's happening over one side of the world that we should be ignoring. And people are incredibly fearful about the amount of loss that could happen in the coming days.
Larissa, your scarf, I can't not notice it. You obviously feel pretty strongly about this issue. Yep. There were big protests on the weekend of people who clearly feel similarly. Obviously, there might be different views across the spectrum. But on that point that Rodger made, that Israel is trying to defend its citizens, if there is a ceasefire, it can't take out Hamas, can it?
For First Nations people, there's an incredible solidarity that exists here, and we are talking about securing a free future for Palestine. We're going to talk about the freedom to continue your language, your culture, and not just to survive, but to thrive as people. And so for First Nations people, we, the day after a devastating referendum loss, are out there campaigning and protesting and calling for peace. Palestine is not Hamas. Palestinians are not Hamas. And so you can condemn the acts of violence, but at the same time, we need to say, we need to look at a future where we do have peaceful resolution here, and we can't just say that there's no room for negotiation. This is one of the most populated areas in the world. Over 50% of the population are children. They are not armed, and we need to say, we can say that what happened is a war crime, but that doesn't justify war crimes going back and forth either side.
Okay. Keith, I'm just going to let everyone have a chance to answer that question because it was framed in such simple terms. If you were Israeli Prime Minister, what would you be doing?
Well, it's not just if I was the Prime Minister of Israel, if I was the Prime Minister of Australia or any other nation. Defend the nation and its people. Make sure that you do everything you can to bring back 200 citizens who have been taken as hostages. And if you want something to happen right now, well, release them. Let them go. We hear a lot of discussion, PK, about pro-Israel, pro-Palestine. I'm just anti-terrorist. Right? This is just outrageous what's happened. And no one wants this to escalate. They do not. Just release the hostages. That's the first thing that should happen.
Adam?
Well, this has moved beyond self-defence into now collective punishment of the people who are in Gaza. There's over 2 million people fenced into an area half the size of Canberra. 40% of them are children. They are being dehydrated, starved, bombed, and they've run out of fuel. Their hospital system is on the brink of collapse, and there's 50,000 women in there who are about to give birth who are now wondering how it's going to happen. This is going to become a humanitarian catastrophe. We should not be backing an invasion of Gaza. We need to see a ceasefire. The hostages need to be released. We mourn the loss of the 1,400 Israelis who've been killed, but also the 4,000 Palestinians who've been killed already. And if you want to see that number not grow any further, we need a ceasefire, we need a stop to the invasion, and then to have a just and lasting peace so that people in Israel and Palestine can live in the just peace and security that we all take for granted and that they're entitled to. The Israeli government needs to end the occupation of the Palestinians.
Okay.